live from the Counterpunch Media Mobile Studios in Grand Blanc, Michigan. It's time for real lives, real families, real fitness. It's time for Derek Noel Fitness.
What is going on, everyone? Derek here from Derek Noel Fitness Live, and you are watching episode 30, or listening to episode 30, one of the two. We have a nice show for you today. I figured since today is actually December 1st, in case you listen to this in the future, we've traveled back to December 1st. I figured it would be a good chance to start to kind of look at 2019 in a review fashion, which I think is going to be actually pretty good. And I'm going to be doing this for a few different trends in terms of, like today we are doing the top fitness trends of 2019. I went and found an article from back at the very beginning of the year. In this case, it's from self.com. I found a few of them, but all of them were basically the same. So this is just the one that I'm using. I will make sure that I post the actual list on probably the comments, and when I get all of this stuff uploaded, it'll be in show notes when I'm going there. Remember, too, that throughout all of these things, we're going to be able to discuss it. So make sure if you're on the live feed, you're dropping comments in as I'm talking through these. I have 10 plus an honorable mention. We'll see if I get through all of them today, because I feel like we all know by now how much I can ramble. But you can also give us a phone call at the same time, which is going to be really, really cool. And if you would like to call in and chat, we'll be able to do that at 810-412-5999. One more time, that is 810-412-5999. We'll be opening up the lines in just a few minutes to be able to talk through that. And real quick before we get started, if you could just go ahead and stop everything that you're doing besides watching this video, maybe give this video a share and a comment and a like, and that the screen with the phone number, in case you need to see it or you're watching it, is going to pop up right now. Completely lost train of thought. So feel free to give us a call. We can talk about these, or if you just have a question, feel free to drop it in the comments. I always like going a little off topic and answering viewer questions or listener questions. Remember, one more time, that phone number is 810-412-5999. We got a good show, like I was saying. Next week, I'm going to be doing the top nutrition trends of 2019, so I'm kind of breaking these down. And then the last week of December, which is, I still have to look at the calendar, but if it's falling onto one of the holidays, I'm going to make sure that I have a pre-recorded show that we could put up at the end of the month, because, you know, holidays. Or if it's not on one of the holidays, then the show will be live. It's going to be a good time. Let's get this party started with the top fitness trends of 2019. Just adjusting these earphones real quick. We are starting out with one that I actually partake in myself, and a lot more people are, and it is wearable technology. I am currently wearing a band called a Whoop band, which I am not actually affiliated with Whoop at all, but this thing is actually really cool. Other people use Fitbits, which is a wearable tech piece as well, and I'll talk about Fitbits in a second. But these wearable technologies are getting to the point where they can track a lot of things. So this is tied to an app on my phone. Hello, April. This Whoop band is tied to an app on my phone where it doesn't actually track my steps, but it's constantly monitoring my heart rate. And it is actually pretty accurate compared to some other bands, which I'll talk about that in a second. But it will also give me my heart rate variability, what my resting heart rate is for the day, and it'll give me the trends of where my heart rate typically is while I'm training as well. And it'll let me know on those days where, oh, hey, you're not as recovered, or you're pretty well recovered, whether or not to lay off my training or push a little extra harder in my training, which is really cool. Moving in, I also have a Fitbit, which is actually on the charger right now, which can track steps. It can also track heart rate, but I found that it's not nearly as accurate. And the big thing is actually tracking those steps, because a lot of people feel like they need to go all in on doing like exercising 5 or 6 days a week. But the Fitbit makes it really simple. You just need to get your steps in. And I know that it works because it kind of gamifies it by allowing you to enter into step competitions with other people, especially on the app. And I know a couple people who will literally go out for walks or just start pacing back and forth to build up those steps because they need to beat someone. And I really feel like in the future, gamification is going to be a big thing. So in short, wearable technology, which was #1 on self.com's list of the top fitness trends way back. I think the article was actually written in like November, December of 2018. They were definitely right on the mark there. More and more people are wearing Fitbits. They're coming out with these bands. They have other things called Oura rings, which are actually a ring which tracks everything as well. You have Whoop also has a bicep band, which is even more accurate. Plus, it's a little bit better if you're doing something like rolling around in jiu-jitsu, having the bicep band instead of having something that can get snagged when people are grappling and holding. And even the heart rate monitors, like I know a couple of different big box gyms have been using things like MyZone or something like that to track heart rate. And there's even another basically group training facility or franchise that's really risen up in 2019, which bases almost the entirety of what they do with their group training over that heart rate. So it's really cool with wearable technology. As time goes on, more and more tech is going to be coming out. I really feel like that is going to be the future. But at the same time, you don't want to be relying entirely on these. Really, nothing can beat the good old-fashioned logging how you're feeling, like a little 5-minute journal every morning when you wake up. How are you feeling? How are you rested? How sore are you? And different factors that might have gone into that so that you can look long-term with all of those things. Moving on to #2, we have group training, which I am a group training instructor. It's what I do. It's literally how I make my money, which is actually a combination of the 2 and 3. Group training is really on the rise. There are more and more group training facilities. When I first started, there really weren't that many. We had Fit Body Bootcamp, which is where I work. Now you have Fit Body Bootcamp, F45. You have Orange Theory. You have the classes going on at Planet Fitness. You have the small group training classes. You have people opening individual studios for bootcamp. The list goes on. Everyone is trying to get in on group training because that is the future, because it's a little bit more affordable than doing straight one-on-one personal training, but you still basically get the same, or I shouldn't say the same results, because one-on-one personal training is still going to be the best bang for your buck, but having this group training, which, by the way, group training is considered a group of 5 or more people, it can be a really, really good stepping stone for a lot of people who are just getting started in fitness, because they're around other people who are just like them. That ties into #3, which is HIIT training. If you don't know what HIIT training is, especially if you've seen it with HIIT, it's high intensity interval training, is also becoming a really big thing. Honestly, I don't think it hit its stride as well as it has in years past. Is it still there? Yes, because all of the group training facilities are also doing high intensity interval training. For example, that's what we do at Fit Body Bootcamp. But HIIT training, you can really think of it almost like CrossFit was really big into this a couple of years ago, and they still are, with the popularity of CrossFit growing and growing, and the CrossFit Open and the CrossFit Games and regionals and things like that, that high intensity interval training with their Metcons or metabolic conditioning. Group training and high intensity interval training go hand in hand also because that makes it really easy to do a 30 or a 45-minute or an hour-long class just with high intensity interval training. That being said, if you are doing high intensity interval training, it is honestly not a good idea to do it every single day. Going back to the whole over recovered that my band was telling me about, typically, especially in a group training setting where coaching out of the gym isn't nearly as intensive, recovery becomes an issue if you do too much high intensity interval training. So even at boot camp, I usually don't suggest people are doing that. And we are actually getting a phone call. So who do I have on the line?
Ed, Derek, Brian Brody, how are you?
Hey, Brian, how's it going? Long time no talk.
It has been. Well, I was thinking about you, especially after Thanksgiving, and wondering if you were getting a lot of calls or interest or emails or texts about people going, I went a little overboard. Thanksgiving Day, does it mean all my fitness goals are shot till the end of the year? Should I just go ahead and binge eat till Christmas and then call it a new deal January 2nd, who are we kidding? Not January 1st, but do you find that a lot of people are just writing off the month of December in hopes of the new year?
Honestly, people who aren't normally associated with talking to me on a normal basis,
Sure.
yes. People who do talk to me on a normal basis, I've been basically preaching hard the whole one day isn't going to ruin everything, because it really won't.
Right.
Basically,
and mentally, I imagine probably good for you, mentally, so that you can say, hey, I went a little crazy, I went off the reservation for one day, but that allows me to get back on track pretty easy, I would think.
Yeah, especially honestly, I was telling some people not even to weigh themselves for a week or two after Thanksgiving, and to use this time as a family time. Because really, especially Thanksgiving, the whole thing is like you have a giant meal, but the main thing is family and giving thanks to everything that you're grateful for. So the bigger focus is there, and then even if you do gain a pound or two from actually eating all that food, it's going to be gone within another day or two, because a lot of times it's just, oh, hey, I ate a ton of food. That ton of food is inside me still, and it hasn't gone anywhere.
Sure. So is that then a good one? Because I imagine throughout the year people are the same way with water weight, right? Because what's a gallon? 8 pounds of water. And do most people tend towards dehydration because they're afraid if they drink enough water, the next time they hop on the scale, they'll be carrying around that 8 pounds of H2O?
I don't think people are afraid. And I don't think that's why people are dehydrated. I think people just get dehydrated because they don't realize how much water they should be drinking, or they don't want to be going to the bathroom every 20 minutes, and that's what they're afraid of. But basically what I've found working with a lot of people is they just don't know how much water they should be drinking.
So what's a good, I know the rule of thumb isn't probably the way to ask, but what's a good guideline for how much water you should consume, especially during the wintertime, right, where a lot of people run electric heat and a lot of people are doing different things, indoors so that they're dehydrated just from that? What's a good guideline for how much water we should be drinking?
A good guideline is actually the general rule of thumb, as you were mentioning. That was probably not the best way to ask or to answer, but because it really does depend on every person. But if you take your body weight and you divide your body weight in half, so say I weigh 180 pounds, which I do, I would divide that in half and I'm at 90 ounces. That's my baseline for how much water I should be drinking in a day. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is if you're drinking things like teas, or you're flavoring your water a little bit, or you're drinking like a sparkling water, that water inside of that still counts. So people who hate just plain water will kind of shy away from drinking those things. And the one that's actually does help towards hydration, which for the longest time, because there were really no studies done on it, but recently they've been doing a bunch more studies, and they found that coffee intake actually does count towards your hydration numbers as well, because the caffeine in coffee, and even though it's a mild diuretic, there's a lot more water content in it than what it actually causes you to lose.
Wow, so that's good news then for the people that dig Starbucks or any of the other things. I don't like coffee. To me, it is the most vile tasting liquid, even worse than bad tequila, right? But I will say to you, a part of my recovery program is that caffeine helps keep the headaches at bay. So every day I have to, go through the process of grinding my own beans and boiling water. I mean, it's a nice little ceremony I have going every morning. People go, "Oh, you must really like coffee." No, it's disgusting. But there's something about the caffeine that helps me. So I'm glad to hear that although a diuretic, I'm glad to hear that it's not stripping water out of me like some of the old wives' tales about caffeine, say. I'm glad to hear that it gets to add to, now again, take your total body weight, which if you're 180, I'm just a tad more than that. Take your total body weight, divide it in half, and that represents the number of ounces you should drink in a 24-hour period.
Yes. And then if you're exercising for every, I think it's for every 30 minutes or an hour, one of the two, you exercise, add 15 ounces to that number.
Yeah, but I would imagine even getting close to that number, exercise or not, for people that are habitually dehydrated, any little bit has got to help, right? Like driving around in your car without enough oil, getting anywhere near close to half of your body weight in ounces has got to be a benefit.
Yeah, it's true. Especially because water is used for literally everything in your body. So if you don't have enough water, it can't go through all of the processes that it needs. It can't burn energy properly. It can't keep your joints lubricated properly. So water really helps out with a lot of things.
And then, Derek, I don't want to keep you all evening, but for me, one of the other things that I realized is that we have a water filtration system. So I don't drink a sip of water. I just don't trust bottled water anymore. I don't trust water at restaurants. I don't trust water anywhere unless I've filtered it. So is there anything about drinking too much water if your water is full of fluoride or full of any other chemical that you may not be aware of? Maybe then dehydration isn't such a bad thing.
I mean, you still need water. So even if the water's a little bit has like the fluoride, which most water from like city waters do.
Sure.
They just naturally add it in. Or living in Flint, Michigan, you definitely need to make sure you have filtered water in the city of Flint. But in most cases, water is going to be water, and there are certain situations where someone might have a certain sensitivity to something where, they need to make sure that it's purified themselves. But for the most part, as long as people are drinking water, their body does a pretty decent job at filtering other things out too. It's literally why you have kidneys and a liver.
Sure. Well, very cool. All right, brother. Well, I'm glad to hear things are going so well. I mean, we could talk all night about the Ohio State game yesterday, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, please don't.
Exactly so. And continued luck in the future.
All right. Thanks for calling in, Brian. Hope
good.
to hear back from
all
you
right,
soon.
Derek, talk to you soon. All right, brother. Good night.
Good night. All right. So that was Brian Brody, who also is on break from having a show, but he's actually the person who got me started with this, so it was nice hearing from him. Let's get back into this list, shall we? Actually, why don't we take this quick little break before we jumpstart into this next part of the list.
You're listening to Derek Noel Fitness here on IPMNation.com/counterpunch. He'll bring the smarts. Now the sweat, well, that's up to you.
And we are back. So we're jumping right back into this list after we had our first caller, Mr. Brian Brody, who actually asked quite a few awesome questions. But we got to jump into this list. We're starting to run out of time. Number 4 on this list is fitness for older adults, or honestly, just older adults starting to get into fitness, which I love to see because that means that there are people who want to take care of their bodies. It is kind of true that when you say if you don't use it, you lose it, that's especially true with muscle. So as time goes on, if you are sedentary, you're just going to become more sedentary. And honestly, that's going to lead to weight gain by itself because you're doing less and you're probably still eating. Or if you're not, then your metabolism is just slightly starting to slow down. So as you get older, you definitely want to make sure you are working out, or at least if not intensely working out, at least staying active, going out for walks, maybe going for a little jog, whatever you need to do to keep yourself active, to keep yourself up and walking around, all these good things. And a really good way to do it is actually with number 5, which is body weight training or calisthenics. Now I'm sure people have seen people doing crazy things like the single hand push-ups and all that stuff, but body weight training in general is really good. You have something called a relative and absolute strength, and with those strengths, body weight training, you want to be able to master that first. And you can do that by practicing the basic movements like push-ups, pull-ups, squats, anything like that, planking, just mastering working out with your own body weight and still being able to get an awesome workout with it. And then as time goes on, you can become more and more advanced with it. And I have seen a lot more people starting to do more body weight centered movements because you really don't need a ton of machines at a big box gym in order to get a good workout, which I don't think enough people realize. They think that they need to have all these different machines, they need to have all of this different equipment. And I challenge you to try and find some purely bodyweight movements that you can do at home. That's going to be the best way to do it, especially if you are a little bit older, which is back to number 4, and you've never really worked out before. You definitely want to be able to master your own body weight before you jump into moving some big weights. It'll be better on your joints and your ligaments, which, going back to HIIT training, that can start to take a hit on, no actual pun intended, even though that's a good one. So being able to take care of all of these things is just going to keep you moving smoothly for longer, and it'll keep you more active. I always say that my goal is to be that 70, 75-year-old who is still in the gym working out every day and has a lot of energy. And I mean that. I'm looking forward to being able to move basically my entire life at a fairly good pace. So number 6. Number 6 on their list was also placing a higher priority on credentials, which is going to be really good. And I think this has actually become a big thing throughout the entire, through the entirety of my journey through fitness. When I first started working out, credentialing on personal trainers wasn't really a big thing. Yeah, people had certain certifications, or you had people with their certified strength and conditioning specialists. But that was basically it. Now there are personal trainers who are getting way more qualified than they should, and there's a higher priority placed on people with them, especially when it comes to hiring. And I'm going to get into the social media aspect of that in a second. But it's good, though, because that means that there are people who are actually qualified to be teaching these things instead of Joe Schmo who deadlifts with his back at like a nice big circular round when they're deadlifting, and then they're trying to teach other people how to deadlift. That shouldn't really be a thing. Like everyone who is coaching and teaching fitness should definitely be have the credentials to be able to do so. And it's really good to just basically safeguard the population who's trying to work out. Is it nice to be able to know that a peer of mine is certified as well? Yes, because that means I can have some slightly higher level conversations with them. But at the same time, I also know that those people who are my peers who are credentialed are keeping the people that I am also working with safe, which is the #1 priority. So if you ever have thought like, oh, it's a personal trainer, I'm not super worried about it, or if you've seen like, oh man, I really want that guy in the gym to train me because he looks like he does an awesome workout all the time. Before you actually jump in and you try and hire that person, try and figure out if they're actually qualified to do so. Because a lot of times, especially just in big box gyms where you walk up to someone, they might not be. On the social media side of things, there is a higher priority being placed on credentials as well, at least in the circles that I am around. For example, as a personal trainer, I really have no business giving specific meal plans. That is the wheelhouse of a registered dietitian. And actually, in some states, it would be illegal for me to give a specific meal plan. And what I mean by that is like specific portions of specific foods, which you can typically find by way of like if you have a group challenge at whatever gym you're at and it's specific meal plans, those things have to be written by registered dietitians. They cannot be written by a personal trainer, and they can't be written by someone like me. Even if I am a classically trained chef, I can make food, I just can't tell you exactly what to make and in which portions to make it. Which I understand can be frustrated, but please make sure you talk to qualified people. It's in the same vein nutrition-wise with me as it would be of technically I am not qualified to diagnose something that a physical therapist would be better qualified to diagnose, or a doctor, for example. So please, please, please make sure you're talking to the properly credentialed people for advice. The best thing I can do is I could give you a kind of educated guess, but my first thing is always going to be to go talk to someone who is actually qualified for this. And if not, if you need someone to go to, I do have a ton of people that I can refer or defer you out to be able to help you out. Number 7, self.com's list said yoga. I think more and more people are becoming more inclined to do yoga. I really think on half the population being females, it was never really a question of like whether you should or shouldn't. I kind of feel like for females, it's kind of been a set number. It's just as popular as always. But I think for men, it's becoming a more acceptable thing. For the longest time, you know, men had to be macho and couldn't be doing things like yoga. But that part of mobility is really, really important. And yoga really does help a lot with improving your mobility, and it helps with your body weight strength because some of those poses are insane. So, and I've only ever done like half yoga because honestly, like I'm intimidated too because I'm not a bendy person, which means I probably should. And now that I say that, I'm probably going to get called out by at least 5 people that I can name off the top of my head. But moving along, yeah, yoga. Definitely, I'm going to broaden that out and say mobility is going to be a bigger focus because more and more people are realizing that they need to move with a full range of motion and that it's a good thing to be able to have that full range of motion. Number 8 on this list is personal training. Now, this is the other aspect of where I work with. One of the many aspects now of where I work with is personal training, one-on-one training, which is super, super good, especially if you have a coach that can tailor make your program for what you're trying to achieve. So if you have a coach who can coach you, and by the way, I'm going to set this as an aside, try and find an expert if you are looking for personal training or personal coaching in a certain sport, say powerlifting, for example, please try and find someone who is an expert in that field. They will be able to help you the most. For example, if you are an athlete and you're trying to get trained for your sport, find a coach that specializes in training for that sport, and you'll be good to go. And then, or if not, hopefully your personal trainer has the wherewithal to actually find resources and coach themselves up in order to do so, like I had to do with a wrestler that I'm now coaching. I've had to do a lot of research on how to train wrestlers because I want to make sure that I am ensuring that he is on top of his game when it comes to wrestling, especially when it comes to in-season. Because I know from previous experience that there are some wrestlers that just get beat up throughout the season. So being able to tailor my training towards keeping that rolling throughout the entire season without burning them out is going to be good, especially because as later on in the season, other wrestlers are going to be burned out and he won't be, which means he's going to peak way later in the season, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for a postseason peak. But if you're looking to get stronger in powerlifting, find a powerlifting coach. If you're looking for a bodybuilding aspect, if you're trying to put on muscle, find that. If you're looking for a weight loss, work with weight loss coaching, and so on and so forth. Number 9 is functional training. And I'm not talking about functional fitness, which is like CrossFit's whole spiel is functional training. I'm talking functional training as in, hey, the squat is going to help prevent me, learning how to squat properly is going to help prevent me from messing up my back when I go to pick up a piece of paper from the ground. Because I feel like we all can probably agree we never get injured in the process of doing exercises in the gym. It's usually when we're doing something, I shouldn't say we never do, but it's usually when we're doing something silly like going down to pick up a piece of paper, which is weightless, and then all of a sudden when you stand up, oh, there goes the back for a week. So being able to learn proper form for life is becoming a bigger thing. And this was number 9 on self.com's list is functional training. And yeah, I can agree with that, especially because I've taken a more steady approach towards this with a lot of people because really what you're learning in the gym should be able to enhance your actual out of gym life. For example, I'm never looking to absolutely annihilate someone's legs because they need to be able to walk for whatever they're doing later on. So keeping those things in mind is really, really a good thing. And then number 10 is exercise is medicine. This one is saying like exercising will help keep you healthy. And there have been a couple studies that say like, yeah, exercising can help boost your immune system. But at the same time, if you're exercising too much or too intensely, it can actually lower your immune system's ability to fight off infections and make you more apt to get sick. But I really don't consider exercise medicine. I consider exercise preventative. It's more preventative maintenance or promoting health and fitness than medicine. So I feel like that's where it's gone towards, and that's more towards the functional training, and the preventative health part is where it is, but nutrition also plays a factor into that, and I'm sure I'll talk about that next week as well. Real quick, I want to jump down. I saw a couple comments, so let's go through these comments real quick. When I mentioned the whole coffee being part of the hydration, Rachel said coffee is life. I can agree with that. I drank at least 3 cups today. And then Heidi, talking about yoga, says yoga is amazing for men and women. And I agree. Anything mobility-wise, everybody needs that. Something shouldn't be designated just for men and for women, especially when it comes to fitness, because really training is mostly the same. Yeah, women have a couple more things to look at in terms of like how they're training and when they're training and how intensely they should be training, which I can get into a whole other episode about, but that's not for today, especially because I got to wrap things up. Real quick, honorable mention is mobility devices. Things like foam rolling, things like that have become more prevalent in the past year or so, but that kind of goes in with the functional training as well. So there you have it. We've covered Self.com's top fitness trends of 2019. I've given my input whether I think whether they hit the mark or whether they didn't. I think they were pretty good on their list of predictions, which was way back in, I think, December. If you want to check out the list, I will post it in the comments as soon as I am off the air. Make sure you check me out on Instagram at the Derek Noel. You can find me here on Facebook at the Derek Noel. Make sure you listen or watch at ipmnation.com, listening at /Counterpunch or watching at /DNF. And remember, every Tuesday morning at 1 a.m., the podcast version of these, the audio versions of these drops wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure you give this a like and a share. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. I will see you next weekend.